Good morning, everybody. I'm Dave Price. I'm the Director of Sales here at Rock Advisors, and I want to welcome everybody on this beautiful Monday morning. Well, hopefully it's beautiful where you are as well. Today's webinar is on Leasing Insights, and we're going to talk about what's happening, the pulse of today's property management market. And what a better time when the weather's warming up to talk more about leasing as we start heating up in the leasing season. So just in advance of getting into some of today's topics, I want to give you a little bit of an insight into what we've got coming up. So another one of the topics we're going to be focusing on May 5th, just tomorrow, is AI to ROI. This is not a statement, it's more of a question. There's some uncertainty there of how to use AI effectively. Now, one of our guest speakers today is going to be talking a little bit more about that, but we've got a whole free webinar tomorrow on that topic to help apartment developers on that topic. Now, we're also running a series on financial fundamentals of apartment developments, and we've got our part two, the development pro forma that's happening on May 28th. So if you haven't signed up for that yet, the QR code's there. And the the must attend event, I can't stress this enough, towards the end of the year on December 1st, we're running our annual live event in conjunction with the Informa Toronto Real Estate Forum event. Our event is called the Apartment Development Affordable Housing Conference, and a great place to network, meet people, and get current latest insights on how to deal with the challenges that are going on in the market. So mark those in your calendar and come and join us. They'll be highly impactful for you and your projects and your team. Now, in today's webinar, like usual, we've got Q&A. So the chat box, please use the chat box, put your questions in there. We're going to save those to the end of the webinar, but don't make them easy questions, right? Challenge us. Talk to us about what's happening, what you're questioning, and we'll attempt to deal with all of those at the end of the webinar, time permitting. And whatever we can't get to, we'll shift that to following up afterwards to make sure we get all of your questions answered, and we'll rely on the right expert speaker to tackle whatever topic it is that's on your mind. Now, you're going to have access to the recordings. All of our free webinars, you're going to get an email with a YouTube link. It's a public link to watch or rewatch the webinar. And it's also going to be on our landing page to watch the replay. Now, just as a note, any of our paid webinars, all registrants will get access to the recordings for a 2-month duration post webinar. So just know that you're going to have access to the material and the content, regardless of whether it's paid or free. Now, for today's agenda, we're going to be talking about three core critical elements. One is the leasing trends. Next, we're going to be talking about modern leasing operations, and that's trickier than it sounds. And then we've got an expert speaker that's going to walk us through in the technology and tools section to talk about effective use of AI in the leasing operation and the sales cycle. So I would like to introduce two of our guest speakers, one of which is myself, and I've already introduced myself, but also we've got Carolyn Ennis, who's our Director of Brokerage and Leasing. And now it's time to get into some what I'm going to call a meaty topic. So Carolyn, over to you.
All right, thanks, Dave. Good morning, everybody. Here we are after a long winter. We find ourselves into spring. So hopefully you are seeing a little bit of, a lot more traffic coming in. I think I've been talking to some clients, seeing leads picking up, and that's all good. So now it's time to look for, opportunities to increase revenue, make sure that you are on top of your leads. And we're going to give you some strategies and tools today as we go through, just, giving you some tidbits to help you get that on its way. What are you experiencing today? We know there's higher turnover happening. There's rising vacancies across portfolios. We're definitely seeing a decline in rents. Maybe there's some opportunity to increase from the winter months this spring. So look for those opportunities. We're seeing a lot of reporting on longer sales cycles. People are just aren't making decisions on the floor during the tours. We are going to give you some strategies today to work with that and try and get shorten that sales cycle. And then also we're hearing a lot of surge in leasing identity fraud. So those documents you are receiving for your approvals, some people are putting in fraudulent documents, and we have some strategies to prevent that from happening. So that's really important because you want to protect your tenants and your the community that you've worked so hard to build. So that's really important to get the good quality tenants in and keep that from happening. We're also seeing operational burnout. So because leasing and high turnover has been happening, property managers have been working long hours and they're struggling with the administration overload. So, how can we prevent that from happening? And we have some ideas to walk you through that as well today. And that way you can have more focused leasing and, let the property management deal with keeping your residents happy and building a strong community.
So Carolyn's just walk you through the leasing friction, what we're seeing in the market, and this is about more options for renters, more hesitation, longer decision cycles. And what we're hearing from, when I'm on discovery calls, our team is on discovery calls and talking to leasing managers and property managers, is, it's really what's happening after the friction hits your team, right? Because there's an impact there. So because longer sales cycles aren't just longer anymore, they're actually heavier. Each prospect it now requires more follow-up, more touch points, more effort to convert. Pipelines are fuller. They're not necessarily healthier. They're a bit bloated. So teams are busy all day, but the conversions aren't keeping up. So, you know, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that and what the impacts on your team and how to mitigate that. But one thing I'm hearing all the time, and I think we are all hearing this, is leasing managers and property managers are concerned about their staff when they're seeing leads coming in. And Carolyn mentioned traffic's rising, but the conversions aren't necessarily following. So managers are worried that their staff, their leasing agents, are just order takers, and it's not good enough in today's market. So they're wondering, do I have the right people? Are they trained well enough? Do I have to go back to the drawing board? This is what we're hearing. And one thing when we do our mystery shops and we evaluate the strengths and weaknesses, what we're finding is that good quality leasing agents are not using closing techniques, and they're giving a great tour, but maybe they're not handling objections in the most strategic way. And we can teach leasing agents how you can overcome objections in advance of them even coming up so that you can lead to a better, more productive conversation when it comes time to asking for the sale. And sometimes the simplest and most effective closing technique is just simply asking, "Hey, are you ready to get started with filling out the paperwork? Are you ready to come and join our community?" And leasing agents are struggling with asking that question. So it's critical. Now we'll talk more in detail about that, but the next thing that you see up on the screen, operational splits. Leasing managers are now, and it's coming up in conversations about efficiencies in our operation. Who's doing what, and people are kind of scrambling around, and there's not a seamless flow. And especially when you've got more leads in a bloated sales funnel, you want your leasing agents focused on selling. But a lot of times, developers and their systems set up have the leasing agents focused a lot more on paperwork and back office things and handling things that maybe property management should be handling. So we like to see a very distinct split between leasing teams and property management, and creating a system where there's like a baton pass where you're in a relay race where the leasing team takes as far as getting the lease agreement signed, and then or the application signed, and then property management takes over. right? And they handle the credit checks, the background checks, and the paperwork to close it out, while the leasing agents continue on with the next prospect and the next tour and the next follow-up. So there's efficiencies to be created there, and it's highlighted even more given today's pressures. So we can talk more in detail on that, but it's critical that you get that efficiency built into your operation. Now, I highlighted the topic of market friction. So Carolyn talked a little bit about this, and I think it's really important that we dive a little bit deeper into this. So teams are busy all day, but conversions, they're not keeping up. So the problem isn't just time, it's workload per lease. So at the same time this is happening, you're also seeing rising vacancies, and this is what leasing managers are talking about. It's creating a different kind of pressure. So, I think I'm speaking to the choir here, right? Our audience that's on right now. Ownership wants occupancy, and revenue targets are tightening, and the leasing teams are being pushed to move faster. So now you've got tension between speed and strategy, and that's where things really start to break down, right? Developers get a little bit antsy, property managers start to get a little antsy and start to pull back on their pricing strategy to try to force leasing velocity. Well, it's not the right focus. It's not the right way to go about it. You've got to spend more time in looking at your efficiencies of your operations and then figuring out, do I have a marketing problem? Do I have a process problem? Or do I have a staff training problem? Because too often people are jumping to, I got a price problem. I got to lower my price because the conversions aren't happening. And that's not necessarily the issue. So you have to look at it from a standpoint of, is my operation focused efficiently and are my staff trained well enough to deal with the market conditions? So, you know, um, so operational drag is what we're talking about, and that happens when longer decision cycles collide with that revenue pressure, and your team has to absorb that impact. So here's what you need to be focusing on for property management and the developer themselves. So they're you focus on training your staff to actually sell, not just respond. So, and this is at all stages of the sales funnel. And who should be doing that? The difference between leasing and property management. And how do you reduce the friction from lead to tour? Those are smart things that are being discussed in those early discussions where you could get them in for a tour at a much more efficient rate. And it's all about value proposition, really speaking to the value proposition of the property. And you can only do that if you really know who your competition is. So those are things that you definitely need to focus on. Now, we could talk about that all day long, but I'm going to stop there. So Carolyn mentioned the fraud surge. This also helps to create that influx of responses required in determining which ones are, you know, uh, there are identity risks, fake applications out there, determining which ones are the fake ones versus which ones are the real ones. So, um, we're going to talk more about that. We'll give you some strategies and some ideas on how to mitigate that. But sometimes you need to be thinking about, is my staff too lean? If you've only got one leasing agent and you've got 200 units to lease up, you're not going to get the coverage you need. You're not going to be able to spend the time and focus on your real clients. Now, part of reducing that friction is about AI and automation. And I'm not going to talk any more about that because we've got Tammy that's going to come and talk about how to use technology effectively to remove that friction in that lead to tour and that part of the sales cycle. So that's a lot of information. We'll get into more details as we move along. Carolyn, back over to you.
Thanks, Dave. So, what levers can you pull? And again, we're kind of circling back to what we've talked about, but you know, all of these points are very important. So the operational split, making sure you have when you're doing your leasing, you have your property management systems and you have your leasing systems. And at one point, they are gonna, you know, meet, and there's going to be this cooperative action of proper handover of the resident to property manager, because there's been relationships built already through the leasing process. But it is really important to protect the time of the leasing agent. You do not want them focused on administrative tasks, because that they'll get buried in it. And if you have your leasing staff doing property management as well, you're going to find that they're always going to lean towards property management first, because there's fires to be put out and there's customer service to be done, and all the leasing stuff is going to get put off to the side. And timing is everything in leasing. So the operational split is really important. Even, we especially see this in new construction with turnover times happening and high turnover happening. It's not necessarily, oh, we're stabilized and we can, scale back on marketing, scale back on staffing. That's not happening right now. So I think it's really important to, realize that, and realize you're going to have to push out a little further through this period of competitiveness, this competitive market. Sales readiness, again, knowing your value proposition. When I work with leasing staff and leasing teams, we spend lots of time getting ready to be out to the market long before we are active. You really need to know your suites. You really need to know your value proposition against your competition, and you need to have the proper training in place. So make sure your sales staff has the right training, and they're ready to go. The pre-leasing activity is very important. I can't tell you how many projects I come on too late where the pre-leasing activity has been missed. There's lots of marketing to be done to get your awareness out there. There's AI is being offered out there in many areas of marketing today. And you need to really tap into this to bring awareness to your community. There's a lot of competition out there, and you have to make sure you're being seen, and not just, using, for instance, condo developers are very focused on realtors. So, make sure you are looking outside of the realtor network. There is plenty of, marketing platforms to use. You got to use your social media for awareness, and then you got to use your ILS listings. Google's going to be your strongest lead generation, and so is your website. So it's time to fine tune all this and make sure everything is working for you. On the performance compensation, Vanessa's going to drill down on that a little bit, but you really got to know, you got to have a little bit of salary, a little bit of commission bonus. You want to drive targets, you want to drive value increases. All of that can be paid out in bonuses, which is aligned to what the developer or the landlord needs to achieve. So don't forget about these tools, and Vanessa's going to drill down on that a little later. The fraud prevention, yes, that's on the rise. It's tough times out there right now. Make sure you have the proper software, that you're working. I'll talk about it a little bit later on some that you can use. But yes, we are seeing documents coming through. So it's check, 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 and check more. It's, you don't want to just look at credit scores today. You want to look at the full picture. Criminal activity, that was something that's never really been looked at before, but here we are. We need to start looking at, criminal backgrounds. There are, all types of rich people out there, or people that can afford high rent. So let's be careful about who we're letting into our building.
Yeah, Carolyn, it's not just AI is being used by the good guys, but it's also effectively being used by the bad guys.
For sure. Yes. Yeah. Resident retention, I'm going to speak about that a little later, but this is super important, often missed. What kind of community are you building? It's not just, okay, I've leased my building up and now I can just enjoy the cash flow. Every year that resident has a choice to stay there or leave. And so you want to keep them, you want to build community, you want to make sure, they're being well cared for. And this resident retention is so important today. You want to protect your cash flow, and you want them to be renewing with you. So we will talk about that a little bit later on in more detail, but really make sure you have a resident retention program in place, and we can teach those tools as well. The concession strategy, it's very competitive out there. You have to know your market. You have to know what's going on. Make sure you understand, shop your competition. There is a lot of advertised concessions out there today. What can you do maybe a little bit differently, or do you need to be competitive? Are there any back pocket ideas you can have? We always train on concessions. What can we do to improve the unit first that will actually improve the resident's lifestyle, and then, move down the line on, whatever else we need to do to get that deal done. But we really want to be focused on getting as many deals done today. Your leads coming through the door are so important because they're a lot less than they were 3 years ago. So try not to lose a really good tenant walking through the building. Okay, so retention over replacement. So this is the renewal program that we were speaking to. And this is really something you would start 6 months before a lease would expire. You want to have a strong survey going out to your residents. You want to measure your performance. You want to measure their happiness. So when you meet with them, and you're asking them to stay. Are you going to stay with us another year? You understand where they're coming from. Are they happy? Did they have a problem in their suite that wasn't taken care of? Well, you want to make sure that is taken care of right away before you're meeting with them, because you want to come into a happy resident. So this is a really important piece. Don't think you don't need to survey your clients. You need to know how your property manager is performing. You need to know how your building is measuring up. And then once you've had that, you are going to set up an appointment with them and talk to them. And you are asking them, can you stay? And whatever your program is that you have in place, you're running it early. You're running it before you're sending out your notices. And it's important to have that in place so that you're not surprised. You got to stay on top of this. So it's a monthly program you're running. The value add services, what can I do? These are strategies that you can differentiate yourself. If you have maybe not the same amenities as your competitors, or your value add services can make a huge difference in your building. So what are you offering? Do you have a dog walking service? Do you have a concierge level service? Is someone, booking appointments? Depending on your resident profile, there is a lot you can do. Maybe a senior, more oriented building would like, snow clearing service if you didn't have underground parking. So like, these are the things you can think about, and the value add services, and making sure your residents are happy. Um,
Yeah, and Carolyn, if I could just interject,
yeah,
we'll get developers coming to us and ask us, okay, I've heard about value add services, and they're just, okay, so what should I implement? What should I do? And this is a cohesive system where you can't just throw spaghetti at the wall and offer everything to everybody. It has to be targeted to who your target resident profiles are and the demographics that are in the area looking to move into a well amenitized, nice new building. So it all focuses on who's going to live in the building, and it starts there. So we have to take a step back, and when we get that question asked to us, we got to figure out who's there, or who's coming, or who's interested, and put value add services that resonate specifically with who you're trying to bring into the building. And because again, it's not spaghetti at the wall, right? It's we've got this because we know you're interested in it. And when you're on that tour and having those calls, you're learning more about the specific individual that you can then tap into your value add services to say, oh, based on knowing that you're interested in, walking groups, we actually have, or whatever the case may be. It's listening to your prospects and putting services that resonate for them.
yeah, for sure. And where there's lower budgets, a lot of this can be done for like a low cost, whether, like Dave just mentioned, a walking group. I mean, that costs nothing, and sometimes you have ambassadors in the building that love this social aspect. And then you can, work with them and create, monthly family game nights if you're a more family oriented building. So some, landlords fear the costs of these services, and we don't want to offer these services. But really, you can, leverage your resident profile, and everything makes a difference. So there's also the resident referral program, and I would say this is a very important piece of building your community. If you have happy residents, they're going to refer your building, and this could be, you know, a huge piece of your marketing once you're stabilized. And, once people are living with their friends, they don't want to move away. So take advantage of, happy residents. Make sure you have referral programs up in your building, or you're communicating on a blog or in a newsletter that you have this referral program. Introduce it right at the leasing level. Especially in a lease up, you could, if you are, are on track, everyone's going to be happy moving in. Introduce that resident referral right at the top. This can help you fill up your building. Again, building the community, the events and program. I kind of touched on that in the value add services. You can, have these monthly events, one or two. It could be a community potluck. We have a lot of multicultural buildings today, and, just bringing people together and creating that community is very important. People don't want to move away from their neighbors, just as I said. Upgrading the suites. Now, this is an interesting thing that you can do on renewal, and say, okay, well, what's happening? Why do you want to move out of your suite? Well, it's too small. We're a growing family. We need a bigger suite, or we're looking for something like this, like that. Well, don't just let them go. Move them to another suite in your building. You can upgrade them to a different suite. This is great. You're going to have more revenue coming through, and that other unit is going to lease okay. Take advantage of, they're already in your building. They already know you. You've already paid for them to come into the building. Now let's keep them there. So upgrade their suites. Don't be shy of that. Don't worry about the cost of a turnover, because that cost could be hugely, when I say cost of turnover, cost of them moving out of their suite into another suite in the building. Because if they move into another building, that's going to cost way much more. So keep them in your building and try and keep them happy. And sometimes it's downgrading suites. Sometimes someone's lost a job and they just can't afford the suite. Maybe you have to downgrade. So look for those opportunities as well, just to, obviously keep them in the building and not losing your tenant.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about frictionless leasing, right? So we've kind of talked to the edges here. Speed to tour, reducing the time frame from lead to first visit. When we talk about value propositions, sometimes your best value proposition is the fact that you're highly responsive. When a query comes in, you're on it. And I don't mean later that day or tomorrow. I mean, it comes in, and when the phone rings, you're answering within 3 rings. That value proposition could be the difference between winning a new resident or not, because when Carolyn talked about it, people are looking at their options, and if you don't answer the phone, they're moving right on to the next property. And if they answer the phone, they've got a leg up. So think about that. Be better than your competition, and I can't stress it enough. If you have the most or the best, most well amenitized apartment out there, great. You've got a check mark there, but add the check mark of speed of response as one of the value propositions that you bring to the market, and your follow-ups as well. Now, other things that you can do to improve your leasing process and create efficiency is through self-guided options, right? So if you've got access 24/7 to virtual tours, your website is very robust, gives floor plans, walkthroughs, video walkthroughs. That really helps with speeding up decisions and giving them more of a sense of what it would look like to live in the building even before they meet your leasing team and come to the property. So leveraging those capabilities is definitely an advantage and a value proposition. Now, approval velocity. This is where we talked about the separation between the leasing team and property management. If you've got a leasing agent that's spending too much time on paperwork, right? They're not on to the next lead that's sitting there waiting for a response, or when the phone call comes in, maybe they're tackling a phone call or dealing with credit checks or whatever. You don't want that. You can't afford it. You've got to create that separation of duties and create a seamless handoff. So keep your leasing team focused on sales, get property management handling the paperwork, and that will get you a leg up on your competitors. Now, Carolyn talked specifically about making retention a priority. This is critical. And part of that is your speed of communication. And you make that like your new top amenity is anytime you reach out to us with an issue or hey, I've got an idea or anything, you're on it, you're responsive, and it's really important. Now, in retention, we always say property management is one of the four key rent drivers. And it's so important because it starts well before you do your renewal program. Carolyn mentioned you want to start your renewal program, a robust renewal program, 6 months prior to the lease renewal. Well, if you don't have resident retention as your focus, you're going to miss an opportunity and you're going to have to backtrack. It starts day one with your onboarding, right? Booking the elevator, moving in, that move-in experience, and then making sure that if there's any maintenance issues that are outstanding, they're tackled with very timely responses and fixes. And then you have your community building and your events calendar and all of that stuff lends to a beautiful community where people feel a sense of, wow, I'm living with like-minded people where we're getting together and participating where we want and how we want, so that when the renewal program kicks in, they're already happy. They've already had all their issues sorted out, and now it's just about talking about how much they love staying in the building and how long do they want to stay and when do they want to renew and that sort of thing. It's not a if, it's is now the right time to lock into the next renewal period. So it's absolutely possible to create frictionless leasing through operational setup and an approach that really makes sense. So,
Okay. Think, are you good? Thanks, Dave.
yep.
All right. So, just a little bit more on the combating verification risk. So this is the reality. 75% of companies are reporting increased leasing fraud. I've experienced it in lease ups where, we've had leasing agents approached by, criminal activity. They're looking to have a unit, for, things that I don't even want to speak of. But, you just have to be so careful. They were approached probably three different ways, and just stories, and you have to be able to get through this. You have to be able to, spidey sensors turn on, but there's also software that can help identify criminal activity and fraudulent paperwork. A lot of my clients are using Certain here in Ontario. There's Landlord Easy, Single Key, Frontline Lobby is for probably more smaller projects. I mean, AI is being used for this, and it's really important. We don't, if we aren't comfortable with the paperwork that's in front of us, we keep drilling down a little bit further. You do not want to have, these people slip through, and because then you have to deal with the evictions later, and it's costly, and it also can bring down your environment and your community, and you can suffer more move outs. So it's really important. It's automated. It's the screening goes well beyond just employment. It really is a background check. You're learning a lot of their behaviors. It's actually, kind of scary sometimes to think how much AI can learn about us, but these programs are really important to have. So make sure you have a proper screening process. If you're seeing, you know, a statement of their income, from their work, make sure you're looking at their bank account to make sure it matches. Like it's so important. We're seeing everything. So make sure that you have the right checks in place. And if you need more information on this, we're happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, and Carolyn, I would say, there is activity out there where, people are willing to lease suites out sight unseen, and they care very little about what it looks like, what the building looks like, what the operation's all about. That should raise a red flag, right? Valid renters absolutely want to see your property. So sometimes if it seems too good to be true and they're like, yeah, it's just I I'll fill out the paperwork, I'll make payment, no problem, and they don't even want to see it, consider that to be a red flag.
Mhm. Okay.
All right. So now these are deep topics. Anybody has a challenge, a question you wanted to get in deeper about what we're talking about today, reach out to me. You see my contact details up on the screen, plus the QR code where you can book a meeting with me. Happy to talk about any challenges, leasing related or otherwise. But feel free to reach out to me by phone, email, or book a meeting with me. Now, introducing our next featured speaker, Vanessa Dessaw is our Manager of Education at Rock Advisors. And Vanessa, over to you.
All right, thanks, Dave. So, Sarah, you can go forward. I'm going to go over a few of the things that have already been talked about just really quickly. I won't really cover them because we've gone into a fair amount of depth and go through this fairly quickly because I want to get to the AI piece. I know everyone's really interested in that. So, when it comes to recruitment of your leasing staff, we have a number of different ways that we've gone about this in the past, but the hiring seminar is a process that we have coined and used with great success for decades now, actually. It's a really good option for saving both time and money in the hiring process through you do one big recruitment campaign, one big group presentation, and then a series of rapid fire interview sessions composed largely of role playing, which I'll talk about in just a second. But that takes this sort of 3 week, 3 month sometimes process and condenses it into more of a 3 hour time frame. So huge time savings optimization there. It allows you to interview many more people very efficiently, right? So we're more likely to just find a good fit if we can interview more people. So for that reason, we love the hiring seminar. We have talked about this in great detail in previous webinars. So if it's something that you're interested in, if you're looking to put together a leasing team and you want to find out more about the process of the hiring seminar, just put it in the chat or send Sarah an email and she will send you a replay of one of those sessions. It can also be done remotely on Zoom, just like this, using breakout rooms. And we've done it that way many times as well. So when we're talking about hiring these salespeople, though, what we found is they really kind of tend to be a different breed. So a salesperson may not look great on paper in terms of their experience, and that's not always what we're looking for. Sometimes inexperience is fine and almost welcome in this role if they come in with the right attitude and the right just experience in different types of things. So what we're looking for in terms of sales readiness is personality, relatability to your target renter specifically, and a great attitude. And I would also add to that just a dash of hunger, if I can say it like that. Like you see something in them that they want to succeed, they're driven, they want to do well. That's the type of person who will excel in a leasing role. We found that in today's fast moving landscape, it can be incredibly helpful instead of just putting out this job post and waiting for whoever and whatever to come in, maybe sometimes in the neighborhood of like 400, 500 applicants coming through sometimes these massive job boards. It can be really helpful to ask candidates instead to submit a short 2 minute video introduction to themselves, to who they are. It's a great way to just quickly be able to assess their communication style if you think it'll be easy to develop rapport with someone like them. And it's just more efficient to be able to sort through and eliminate applicants for yourself so that you're not interviewing hundreds and hundreds of people. And when we get to that actual interview process, role playing is going to be the key. So we actually don't ask a lot about background. I mean, I always have a cursory glance at that resume and pretend to care about it. But really, then it's just talking, getting to know them and finding out how much they are able to, like kind of drive a conversation, engage with me in a positive way. But then we move into role playing very quickly. We're looking for creativity there. We're looking for communication style. But most of all, when you're rehearsing closing techniques and objection handling, when you throw something at them and wait to see what you get back, if what they give you back isn't perfect, I'm not hiring you because you didn't give me a great answer. But what I'm going to do there is just kind of coach you on what maybe a better thing to say would be more effective and watch your response. So if I tell you what to say and you come back and go, oh my gosh, that's a great answer. I can't wait to try that. Or, oh, could I try it like this a little bit? That's what I want to see, right? Someone who's excited to learn and to grow and to get better at this because leasing's not rocket science. I mean, we can teach you every single piece of this process. So as long as you have a great personality, attitude, and willingness to learn, often the key to carrying this role. So we can go on to the next slide here, Sarah. In terms of the value of a great leasing professional, I'm sure many of you are familiar with this. Just really quickly, if we look at this formula here, you have your NOI divided by your cap rate gives you the purchase price of the building. So if we break that down here and add, let's say you have a great leasing professional, okay? And we'll say let's say the two bed is leasing at $2,900 a month. Okay, that's the price that you've got. But your leasing agent develops this great rapport with your client. The client asks you, so how much does this one go for? And they turn around and say, so this apartment home leases for $3,000 a month. Okay, you're expecting 2,900. They get an extra $100 a month. Is that possible? 100%. Like we've seen this done many times. Today's market is a little bit different, so this might not be super effective at the moment, but it's a technique that we use all the time, and a good leasing agent can absolutely do this for you. So if they get an extra $100 a month, just 100, that money goes straight down to your bottom line, right? Your expenses haven't gone up. You're just bringing in a bit more rent. But what does this mean for the value of the building? So if we take that 100 and we multiply it out over your 1 year, the 12 months, so we have $1,200, divide that by your 5% cap rate. It increases the value of just that single apartment by $24,000. Now, this is the way that apartment owners and asset managers think. So those of you who are responsible for leasing need to be thinking in this way, right? If your leasing staff can generate $100 a month extra, right down to the bottom line, times 12 at a 5% cap rate, that's $24,000 in value just to that one unit, right? Multiply that out across a building, across an entire community, and those results get very interesting. So it's really important to get this leasing role right, because leasing professionals are the bread and butter of this industry. They're literally the ones who are feeding people and paying the bills at every level of the organization through the business that they're able to capture. Okay. So yes, their skills can generate increased income, but this also translates to increased value in the property. And Sarah, if you can go forward a slide here, I'm going to show you how that just plays out. So let's say these numbers are a little bit older, but let's say we have a 100 unit building, okay, base rent of $215 a square foot, making the average rent $16.12 for a 750 square foot apartment. You see that all up at the top there with those check marks. Operating expenses we put at 30% with an exit cap of 4.25. Okay, so if we look at the table, you can look at this yourself and see it. I'll go through a few numbers. That first column is exactly what I just said. And we have a building value of $45.5 million. Okay, now we're going to increase the rent by 5 cents a square foot. So we're up to 220, making our rent $16.50, which is an increase of, quick math here, is that like $38? $38. All right, so that's like one lunch during the week. $38. If we did that across the building, though, look at how much the value of the building goes up by here. It's over $1 million by increasing the rent by $38 across the community. Now, if we keep going down the chart, I'm not going to go through all of it, but let's just go to that last column. So if we increase rent by 20 cents a square foot, we're up to $235, making our rent, it looks like exactly $150 more, right? $17.62. And does that happen? I promise you, we've seen it before many times. So if you can increase the rent by $150, the value of the building goes up by over $4 million. Right? These aren't small numbers. And I'm not telling you to increase rent right now by 150 by any means, but in good times, these are things you can do. The ultimate result from your leasing agent, though, is to generate value in the building by doing just an outstanding job throughout the entire sales process and really connecting with your clients as they come through the door with the prospects. So let's keep going here. I know I'm blowing through this really
Vanessa, I
quickly.
want to I
Yeah,
want to tap into that real quick, real fast.
go ahead.
Leasing managers and property managers say to me, how am I going to do that? How am I going to get my leasing agent to raise that rent up to
Mhm.
that level when I've publicized my price? And how do they do that? Well, that's where your marketing strategy comes in, where you're saying, starting from your rent, starting from. Tap into that and tie it into your leasing agents, getting you more rent where it's possible.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thanks for adding that, Dave. That's really important.
Yep.
Starting from not a range, we tend not to offer ranges in any of our marketing materials so that you can still have the flexibility to push. All
Yep.
right. So Carolyn mentioned we talk about compensation, and I have a very abridged version of that I want to share with you today. I'm happy to talk through questions afterwards. But to begin with, we always need to start with a competitive base salary, right? We can't really expect people today to work on 100% commission, but we can dole out commissions creatively. So to start with, we always recommend the graduated commission, where the more apartments that an agent is able to lease, the higher the compensation for all of them, going back to the first one, that they'll get in that month. And especially in a softer market, these incentives can really drive your leasing staff to go after those higher commissions and fill the building that much faster through creative touring features, feeding back to marketing, getting involved in the whole process because they care about the results, right? Just generally taking more ownership over the process. And we certainly want to offer exciting rewards for back-to-back rentals. So if someone's moving out, if they can fill that apartment quickly instead of having it sit for three months or something like that, that they already kind of have somebody waiting in the wings to take over as soon as the turnaround is done. They're just more complicated, of course. Right? We have to give notice for tours and things like that. But the payoff for us is an apartment that's not just sitting there empty for months after it's vacated. So think about having a strategy in place to reward your agents for back-to-back rentals, just to incentivize that. A straight line versus strategic compensation. So, of course, you have the option to do a straight line, just flat rate commission for every apartment that you lease. You're going to get X number of dollars. But we are big fans of a more strategic approach to it. So often we'll do something like, and I'm just going to pick some numbers here, but let's say we do $150 for a lease. If you lease one apartment, you get 150. But then we have a target of, let's say, 15 apartments or 10 apartments. If you hit that 10 apartments, then that number goes up maybe to $200 per apartment. And then super bonuses when they exceed. So if they go over, let's say, 20 apartments that month, they get a bigger bonus check on top of those flat rate commissions or graduated commissions up to there. Okay? So just again, incentive to hit different thresholds to get higher to fill up that building more quickly. The other piece here, though, is moving from that per lease bonus to a velocity and value type of structure where you're rewarding agents, like Dave and I were just kind of talking about. We raise the average rent per square foot, right? We have the option to do that. If they can do that, sometimes so, they'll push the rents and then they'll slow down in terms of leases because now we're sitting at a higher number, right? So less people are actually saying yes. So the key here is making sure that they're maintaining pace, right? We're bonusing them based on getting these higher rents, but staying at about the same pace of filling the building. The other piece you might think about in terms of compensation is renewal commission. So for each resident that they re-sign after their lease is up or prior to it ending, and you can bonus your property managers, but also leasing professionals if they're involved in this piece. Okay. And then, okay, modern leasing operations. These are just a few, maybe very obvious, but maybe not, ideas around pre-leasing and the leasing process. So in pre-leasing, Carolyn spoke to this a little bit, but you certainly want to be generating as much early engagement as you can. So marketing from the earliest days with coming soon boards up around your construction site, landing pages, QR codes to be able to capture information from interested parties, right? Well before occupancy, which then lead into these nurture campaigns. And these can literally be 100% automated now with a few clicks to manage that longer sales cycle that we've been talking about leading up to the big lease up. So that you have names of people who are interested and maybe even qualified by that point. And then wherever feasible, everyone's talked about this already, but our recommendation is to have leasing focused on leasing. Sometimes not even paperwork. Sometimes if a building is really busy in lease up, we'll hire someone just to do the paperwork so that the leasing staff can just focus on that client-facing interaction all day long. As the building fills up, your property manager can be focused more on resident retention, renewal, and building readiness. But renewal programs can also fall to leasing professionals when they have the bandwidth. The point is, let salespeople sell, try not to get in their way, separate out tasks according to skills and aptitudes. And that really is just going to help reduce burnout, which is one of the things that we're hearing commonly right now, and keep the focus on growth. So I will stop there. Again, if there are any questions, throw them in the chat and we'll chat at the end of this.
Thanks, Vanessa.
Mhm.
Carolyn, would you like to introduce our next featured guest speaker?
We're happy to have Tammy Cybrock here today. She's the Chief Imagination Officer of MPro Digital Edge. Tammy brings rare dual expertise, genuine technology credentials from computing's foundational era, combined with nearly 5 decades of comprehensive multifamily real estate operations development and ownership experience. For the past 2 years, Tammy has been immersed in building MPro Digital Edge from the ground up. This is an AI-powered workspace platform featuring 166 plus tools across 57 AI models, designed exclusively for multifamily professionals. This wasn't configuration or customization, it was architecture. selecting models, engineering prompts at scale, designing governance guardrails, testing outputs against compliance requirements, and understanding where AI excels and where it fails. Building an AI platform demands a level of fluency that using one never provides. You learn which models hallucinate under pressure. You discover why governance can't be bolted on after launch. You understand taking limits, context windows, and why the same prompt produces different results across platforms. You see firsthand how AI breaks when it hits real world workflows and how to prevent it. AI, Tammy, I'm calling you the AI champion. Welcome today, and we look forward to what you're going to teach us.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and come in and share my screen if you'll turn over that availability to me. Okay. And
There we've
so
got
my
you.
topic today is on fixing the funnel. And what's really interesting is, of course, I'm very AI focused, but what we're finding today is that the funnel fixes we need to do are all in the data end. So I'm going to be spending the majority of my time talking to you about your current data. And in my slides, you're going to actually see, and I'm going to provide you with the tool, you'll actually see where I provide you with the AI solution that is there. But I want to talk to you about making certain that your data is actually correct. Because what we're seeing today is that we're only tracking maybe one or two of the different stages out of the 7 different stages we are in the actual funnel itself. And what's interesting is the funnel's really not a funnel anymore, except we keep calling it that because we've had a funnel forever. And it's been proven a long time ago that it's actually a very messy a circular type of thing. It's really not a funnel. Or you can look at it as there's a tornado inside the funnel, and we'll talk about that. So what we're finding though today is that there's many leaks throughout the actual funnel itself. So just quickly, I want to review with you the 7 stages of the leasing funnel, and then where it starts spinning, where that tornado is inside the funnel that becomes quite confusing. So stage 1 is a search and discovery. This is when people are first triggered to find an apartment. So those of you with existing assets today that are causing that trigger. And in this type of economy, we're finding that when we go out to our residents, and let's say we're giving them a 60 days notice or maybe even a 90 days notice, we're triggering that search and discovery out there. And then they can go out and find those concessions that are being offered or lower rents where people have dropped the rents. So in a lot of cases today, we are not triggering our own residents. We avoid giving them a rent increase, or we avoid and allow their rents to go to month. So there is definitely a strategy there that you can run to find if that works for you. But you definitely want to look at that in the triggering stage. That's in search and discovery. And then stage 2 is where they've clicked on an ad, whether it's your ILS or your Google ads, print ads, those kind of things that hand it off to the web experience, and then what's going on your website and being able to evaluate that, and then capturing the leads in the first contact. What's really going on there? And then the nurture follow-up, the tour conversion itself, and then the actual application to lease. Where are each stage dropping off? And that's what the tool that I've designed for you will help you figure all this out. But remember what I said. What we're finding today is most people are only tracking 2 of these stages. So you can find a lot of money that you're leaving on the table by tracking all your stages. So let's talk about stage 1. Are your prospects finding you? What is your impression share? And what we're finding is that if it's below 40%, if your impression share in the market, you're invisible. They're not finding you because they're doing their initial search. Let me talk about an initial search. We have proven today that we are back to an age when people are actually looking for an apartment earlier. So the people that are leasing this month of May actually started looking in February. When did you start marketing your asset? Did you really start that winter focus? Because the people who are leasing today and moving in actually started looking in February. So, and those are your golden people too, because you don't want the people who were just triggered. And this could be from various reasons. You'll get some of those, like, they're just moving into the area for a job transfer, or they're going through a divorce, so they hurry up and need an apartment. What we've learned is that fast in, fast out. The people who take the longer amount of time and that you have to nurture on a longer are your most valuable residents, and they will stay longer in your community, meaning they'll take the rent increase and the renewals. So you really want to focus on those people who are looking further out. What we find with leasing professionals today is that people are coming in and they're looking 120 days out. They'll say things to them like, oh, well, we don't know what our availability is going to be like, so you're going to need to check back with us. Well, that's just turning them away. And those are your golden people. So the longer someone is actually looking for an apartment are your golden ones. They're going to stay longer and take those rent increases. So you really want to make certain of that. What we're also seeing in stage one is you haven't done things, the very basic things before you get to an AI solution. Your Google business profile needs to be optimized. Are you posting to it every week, just like you do a blog? Is everything corrected? Is your NAP, your name, address, and phone number, is that identical across the entire internet? That's part of SEO that a lot of people overlook. So you really want to make certain that your stage one is fully in place and you understand what's going there and what's triggering these people to move. Stage two, the number one thing that we're seeing is that there's a huge gap in what people are actually attributing to their lead sources. For example, the UTM, the urgent tracking perimeters are stripped off. So if something is coming from your Google business listing, can you tell that it's coming from your Google business listing? It doesn't have the proper code. Is it coming from Facebook? Is it coming from a QR code? Is it coming from an ILS? If you don't have that little snippet that goes on the end of the URL, the little tiny piece of code, you're missing that tracking. So you really don't know where your traffic is coming from, because they'll easily say, oh, well, I found you on Google, or I saw your website. But something happened before that, and it might not have been the first thing. So if you're not using the right codes or the snippets, no AI is going to help you. You need to make certain that you have your fundamentals in place first, so that you know where things are coming from before you start applying AI to it. So stage three is very, very important. This is when they actually get to the website experience. And what we're finding, and I catch this all the time, which is interesting, is something on your website has changed. Whether it's your availability that you're pulling in from Yardi, whether it's you've added some new pages and changed it. But what happens is you don't go back and follow that process all the way through. So the links that you're using to advertise that floor plan, say on Facebook, or I see this one all the time on Google, hasn't changed. So when somebody clicks that link, it's taking them to the wrong page. So you're going to get a very high bounce rate, because it's going to give you a 404 that page isn't there, or maybe that new link is now back to home and they don't want to take the time to go all the way through the website to find what it is that they really want. Example, pet friendly. They might have clicked a link because it said pet friendly, but all of a sudden they're on your amenities page. Or they might have clicked a link that was interested for a 1-bedroom and it takes you to a different link throughout the website. So you want to make certain that that is there. You also want to make certain that you definitely have your video tours and content. You guys, it is not just a generic video tour of a one-bedroom apartment. What we find today, and we know for a fact, is converting, and we can see this by heat maps, which is an AI solution, is that they want to see that identical apartment. Is the apartment that you have available the apartment that you're showing on the website? Apartment 101, and it's a tour of apartment 101. If you're an existing asset, you should be recording and creating videos, and you can use Matterport, or I personally like Giraffe. It's more affordable, and Giraffe is actually out of London, and it's a fabulous service, Giraffe 360. But you start collecting these, so anytime an apartment becomes available 60 to 90 days out, if you can put that apartment number with an availability date, with an actual video of that apartment, you're going to see that you start leasing a lot faster. So these things are all critical before you start placing the AI solution in there. Also, having the most current rental rates available in the United States. Now we have to require total monthly rent because of the lawsuits we had over rent pricing with revenue management systems. So it's critical now that you're displaying those proper rents that do not require a call. Don't think because your rent's not there that they're going to call you. These people are busy. They want to know what the rents are. So if you're not giving them the proper information, no amount of AI solution is going to help you, because they're going to bump off and go to the next person. There's a lot of availability out there today with a lot of concessions. So stage 4, where do we have here? This is where you were capturing the leads and we're getting our first contact. What's very interesting is that if they're receiving a recording when they call your office, or they're getting a generic AI response, or they're getting chatbots, what we have found, I studied the rental journey. It's one of my businesses, and I studied for the largest property management companies in the United States, and then also in some other countries. And what we're finding is that these chatbots are causing more damage to the leasing process than they are. We actually had a brand new lease up being done in Washington, D.C., and we couldn't figure out why people weren't leasing apartments. And what we found was that they were using the chatbot, and they were becoming very frustrated. When they called the office, they were given to an AI chatbot. So people were actually using AI in a way that was causing people who were paying extremely high amounts of rent to not want to lease the apartment because they wanted a better experience. So getting a real life person today is actually an advantage. And also they're finding that these chatbots that they're using were all trained the same. So everybody sounded the same, and there was no different because they were all using the same chatbot, whether that is a Yardi chatbot or a RealPage chatbot or any of the other services that are out there available. And it's all in the way you're trained, how they're trained. It is important to have that after hours mechanism, but you also have to make certain that the way you train it gives them the appropriate answers, the appropriate links, and that you're auditing it. AI chatbots today are not something that you turn on in this lead capture and first contact, and you turn on and you don't check them. They have to be checked, just like a brand new employee. You wouldn't just leave them with the keys to the apartment to go see them. This chatbot is an employee. So you have to make certain that that employee is doing what you want them to do. And if not, getting them trained to do those types of things. So we're seeing that in stage 4, there is a lot going on here that people are not capturing properly and handling properly. So 80% of those leads are being wasted.
Tammy,
Stage
we're not
5.
replacing humans. We are using technology to our greatest advantage, not replacing humans.
Yes. Well, isn't that what Mustaf said from Microsoft, right? Microsoft came out in November and said very clearly that their entire goal with AI was to make certain that it amplifies the human experience, that we work alongside AI. And as developers, we all know scaffolding. So it's building the scaffolding for a human to climb while we're building the building. And when the scaffolding comes down, it's still human that's there. That building is actually there. So a lot of people are, oh, I'll give you a great example. There are many companies, especially in the United States, that have terminated 8,000 people. And what they're finding was today, they're hiring them back because they
Yeah.
found that AI is not doing what we thought it was going to do. So this nonsense about people losing their jobs because of AI is really not true. What is true is if you don't know AI and you don't educate yourself on AI and get the education that's needed on AI is where you will not have a job. So it is about using AI and using AI appropriately, but not relying on it to do everything for you, because that's a fallacy. That's not happening yet. We're not even close to that stage in our industry of development, leasing, marketing, and management. We're
Yeah.
quite a ways from that. And there's
Yeah.
a lot of risk. So I spent a great deal of my time doing this. Also, follow up, nurture and follow up. What we're finding is that there's all these systems out there that we can send them the automatic response. That's great if the automatic response is sending things to them that are important and relevant to them. For example, you would be sending things such as, here's information about our neighborhood, here's information about our community amenities, and so forth and so on. But what is absolutely the most critical component that we find is that these are, in addition to your auto series that is being sent, that these are personalized custom follow-ups, that a real human is making that contact and making certain that those things are triggered. So, and it's not just one or two times. We're finding that, especially in nurturing. And remember what I said, people that are looking 120 days out for a new home are your most valuable. Those are the people that are going to accept your rents and keep growing. So you don't want to just have them on a whole nurture program. Yes, it's great to use that, but you also want to have some personal contact in there as well. Next, the tour and conversion. What we're seeing is that our leasing teams are so well trained in many cases that it's not necessarily, they don't have the problem of when they're coming in that they're actually closing. We find that if we can get them to come in and tour the community with a real live person, that we're able to convert those, because we all know and have put the attention in that tour and conversion ratio. So if they're not closing, those are the things we need to look at. People today want to see an apartment. They don't necessarily want to have a person showing them. But I will tell you some of the things that we've done to help augment that. We will have a QR code that will, when they go into the self-touring apartment, where they come in contact with a conversational chatbot. This conversational chatbot is designed to ask them questions and becomes the salesperson and points things out to them while they're in the apartment, and they can communicate with the prospect just like we do. We really spent a lot of time on training this and making certain that this is an effective way to handle it. And then there's that personal follow-up that comes after those self-guided tours. We're also finding today that people don't want to take the time, and especially in the winter when they're looking in February, right? In Canada, it's very, very cold. I know when I was spending an enormous amount of time there, I would freeze, and there were days I didn't even want to go outside, right? But that's the way, and we're in the middle of a new lease up. So what we found very, very effective in Toronto was that we would give these virtual tours over the phone. Very simple, easy to do. There's very low cost tools that you can buy to hold your camera, to keep it stable, with microphones that give you clear communication, to actually do those tours over the phone. And we find that we lease a tremendous amount of apartments that way. So there's all kinds of options there before you get to AI. And then what we're using AI for is to take those videos, take those tours, listen to those telephone conversations, and actually running them through assistants that we've trained to give us improvement. Also, we're using AI in this area to help us even better with our tour to conversion ratio. So we build assistants today that come in, and we say, Sally's coming in today at 3 o'clock. She's single, but she is a mother and has a daughter that is going to school. She also has a cat, and this is the type of furniture she's bringing with her. We upload this along with the floor plan. She's also looked at another apartment community. This is the floor plan that she likes from there. We upload that floor plan, and the AI is then able to give us the perfect presentation tour package for Sally, and we're able to lease to her more effectively because we have more information. So we do know the more information that we can collect, the better off we are, and we can use AI to help us improve that tour follow-up, or even giving a tour itself through virtually. And then application to lease. I think that the entire Rock Advisors team makes some very, very good points about the amount of fraud that is actually going on, and how critical it is. All excellent points. I would also like to point out that using AI in this is also alleviating a lot of the bottlenecks, and that instead of it taking 2 or 3 days for an application to get approved, we're finding that it can get approved much quicker, and that's what people are expecting today. So that would be in stage 7. So what we're seeing today is AI actually replacing some of the areas that need to be done, but things that are being effective are things that removing the guesswork. So these are spreadsheets, attribution gaps that are out there, the lead follow-up, getting rid of that gut feel versus what it should be, the tour, being able to create a quality tour, those types of things, versus what AI is really, really great at handling. Remember, AI is nothing but a tool to help you think. It helps you brainstorm, and it is a prediction tool. It doesn't know. So it's all based on the information that you can provide it to help you coach along in areas that will actually help leasing. The human touch is extremely important to keep. So what does a fully connected tech stack look like? And I spent most of my time today talking to you about your data layer. That's critical. So what we do know is that if you don't have a good data layer starting this out, none of the other layers are going to be helpful to you. So the collection of data in the leasing process is critical, and making certain that you have all your data connected properly, and you're not just tracking those 2 stages, that you're tracking all 7 and have great layers of that 7 so that you can use it to create your intelligence component of that, to give you those actions. You'll see there's a link here at the top, multifamilynext.com/fix, and the password is fix with a capital F. It'll take you through step by step the entire funnel. It'll give you red flags. It'll give you some diagnostics. It's a fabulous tool. I highly recommend that you go there. We don't collect any of the data. I don't see your data. It's all encrypted. Only you see the data and your use. So I would love for you to go through that. I think it'll be very helpful to you. Thank you for giving me this time today, Rock Advisor. All of you guys did a fabulous job.
Tammy, thank you. That great information. Anybody wants more information, definitely check out the link that Tammy supplied. And if you want a deeper, further conversation, we'll make sure that you can get connected. Um, you know, one of the things, Tammy, that you had up on one of your slides is that automatic alert when conversions drop. Data is everything, and being alerted and having data readily accessible throughout the sales cycle for the leasing agent. Use your AI tools to supplement the knowledge and data that your leasing agents have so that they can keep the consistency through every touch point. It's tough to remember what every prospect has said to you, interested in, and your data layers and your AI tools can help make sure that your leasing agents are equipped at every stage, every touch point. It's critical. It's not replacing humans. It's supplementing and enhancing and almost like 10xing their capabilities. So now you see the QR code up there, fix the funnel, absolutely scan that. Now, Sarah, I know we've gone over time here. We still have plenty of audience that is still with us. I just want to let everybody know that because we run educational webinars all year long, if you want to stay plugged in or get plugged in, please scan this QR code up on the screen so that you can be alerted to what's coming next and you can attend the educational webinars and get access to the information in a timely way. So get connected, stay connected with us. Now, Sarah, do we have a couple of minutes to ask some questions? We still have some people around, or should we wrap?
I think probably
Yeah.
wrap just because we're 20 minutes
Yeah.
over.
Okay. So,
Sorry, that was probably me being verbose.
oh,
Oh,
no,
no.
Tammy, you were great. This is good information, but everybody, those that have questions in, and I had a couple of my own. We're going to reach back out to you, get all your questions answered, and we'll get the expert speaker in front of you to answer those questions specifically. So I wanted to say to everybody, thank you very much for joining us. This is a deep, deep topic. More discussions to come. So please don't be shy. Reach out. We're here to help. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.